And I think it's a critical point also for Israel for this to be clear that it's not just about Israel.
Right.
I mean, Israel is in this story. Israel will be the first target of the Iranians if they do shoot their missiles. But this is about world security. It's about American security as well.
Is the President of the United States about to order U.S. military forces into battle against the Iranian regime and to wipe out their offensive military capabilities? What was it like to watch President Trump lay out his case to the American people at the State of the Union address? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg. Welcome to Inside the Epicenter. I had the opportunity to attend the State of the Union. I was invited by Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and with me was one of my All Israel News colleagues who also was invited. In fact, he was invited because it was his brother, Hanan Leshinsky, who was assassinated, gunned down, brutally murdered last year on the streets of Washington, and along with his girlfriend, Sarah Milgram. Yaron and Sarah worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington and were attending an event for young Jewish leaders when they were killed by a crazed, fanatical, pro-Palestinian terrorist, domestic terrorist, an American who had traveled from Chicago to find Jews to kill them. And so Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, a wonderful evangelical Christian, invited Hanan Leshinsky, the older brother of Yaron, to come to attend the State of the Union address and sort of represent the Leshinsky family and Sarah Milgram's family. And because he worked for me, I said, Hanan, we'll take care of the cost. Let's go together and let's let you honor your brother and his girlfriend, he was just about to propose to, and let's go see the State of the Union address together. Let's assess it together, and let's meet with the Speaker of the House. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. In the second half of this podcast, you're going to hear my conversation at the U.S. Capitol with Hanan Leshinsky. What did he see? How did this invitation come about? And what were his observations, his takeaways from being an Israeli, a reporter for All Israel News that's supported by the Joshua Fund, being not only someone covering an event, but being part of it as well. In the first half of this podcast, we're going to sit down in Washington with David Brody. David is the newest senior correspondent and contributor for All Israel News. He is a longtime chief political analyst for the Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN News, and he remains in that role. But he's come on recently, just in the last few weeks, to provide us additional coverage and analysis from Washington. And so it's a really interesting conversation I had with him, also about the State of the Union, about the prospect for war at any moment between the United States and Israel against Iran. And David is a Jewish believer in Jesus and a very experienced and accomplished journalist. So we're going to get to all of that on this episode of Inside the Epicenter. And I want to welcome you. Lynn is on a plane right now from Israel to Washington. She will be here, as I'm recording this, it's Friday, February 27th at 7:30 p.m. I give you that sort of timestamp, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. I tell you that, why? Because war could break out at any moment. Everything seems to be set, and we'll talk about that in the course of this podcast. But I just want you to know that Lynn is inbound to Washington to be with me as we have meetings with key leaders and as we have Joshua Fund board meetings in this coming week. But I really felt it was important to get this podcast up, posted and available to you right away. So let's get started. Again, you can find out more about the Joshua Fund by going to joshuafund.com. And of course, I want to encourage you to come on our tour of Israel next April 2027, and come to the Epicenter Summit. You'll find out more about it at joshuafund.com. But right now, we are dealing with this imminent crisis, imminent war, which could be the most dramatic, historic, and consequential war in the modern Middle East since the War of Independence, when Israel became prophetically a new country. So let's get right into it. As we start this episode of Inside the Epicenter, let's go to my conversation first with David Brody, and then after the commercial break, my conversation with Hanan Leshinsky. President Trump on the verge of making his decision. Is he going to war with the Iranian regime? And if he does, he says this is not going to be like June of last year. President Trump is signaling that this will not be a military strike. This would be an intense, aggressive military campaign to degrade and destroy Iran's nuclear capacities, their ballistic missile capacities, and the Iranian regime's capacities to fund, fuel, arm, train terror groups and kill and terrorize their own people. Hi, from Washington, this is Joel Rosenberg. For All Israel News, I'm with a dear colleague. David Brody is a 3-decade and plus experienced journalist and has been the chief political analyst here for CBN News, where we are right now. You remain in that role, but you've also said yes to using a little bit of your spare time to be a senior correspondent here in Washington for All Israel News. First of all, David, I'm so grateful for your friendship over all these years. I'm grateful for your experience, your contacts, you've broken big stories. You've interviewed President Trump and so many others. And to bring that expertise in addition to all that you're doing for CBN and your morning show on Real America's Voice, but also to help us with All Israel News, I'm deeply grateful. And it's great to spend some time, especially just after this historic State of the Union address by President Trump on the eve of war. David, it's great to see you. First of all, let's start with why have you said yes to giving some of your time to what we're doing here at All Israel News?
The answer is pretty simple. It's for such a time as this. I mean, it really kind of gets down to that. Now, of course, that is the case at CBN. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
But there's this extra element, right? I mean, CBN has always been so strong on the Israel issues.
Praise God.
Yeah, and then you're on the ground over there in Israel, and of course, not just in Israel, but all across the Middle East. And to me, this has been a passion and a burning desire for a very long time, Joel, quite frankly. You know, to really speak to an Israeli audience, to speak to a Jewish audience here in America, and a Christian audience, obviously, as well. It's that influx, that Judeo-Christian influx. And, you know, I kind of sit at I don't want to call it the epicenter of it, but if you think about it, I grew up as a Reformed Jew in New York. I got bar mitzvah in the whole 9 yards, gave my life to Christ in 1988. And so here I am. I believe it's some sort of epicenter, or at least crossroads of that in my personal journey, but also in my journalistic journey. And so I think the two weave very well together.
Absolutely. Look, the work you do and have done for decades for CBN is so important. Television is an interesting beast, right? Because no matter what you cover, how much material, there's a limited amount of time that you can tell your story. You do it so well, but as you and I started talking about it, I said, my guess is, David, that you've got material that doesn't have an outlet for a daily digital site and maybe some additional video as possible. We would deeply value, because your expertise, your reporting, because we don't have a bureau. CBN's got the bureau here, and we should be linking together to work together, and I'm very grateful. So let's talk about where we are, and let's just let's open up as a conversation. Feel free. Let me answer any questions you have. But State of the Union, I had the opportunity to be there. It was fascinating to be in the room where it happens. Well, you know, President Trump does not make it boring. You know, it's fantastic. You're crazy. It's a crazy party. They don't even stand to defend Americans. What about the gold medalists, hockey players? You can't even stand. You're not against illegal aliens. You know, what's your problem? It was entertaining. I mean, genuine. And when my colleague from All Israel News, Hanan Leshinsky, we happened to be guests of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Yeah. Wonderful evangelical, and he's doing an amazing job. I want to ask you about him, about Trump, about Vance. But to watch the floor and to watch Rashida Tlaib, the Palestinian-American Israel hater, Trump hater, Ilhan Omar, the Somali-born American Democratic Congresswoman who's shouting, "You're a murderer," to the President of the United States on the floor of the House. There was a lot of theatrics there. It was a bit of a carnival. But I still thought it was a phenomenal speech by the President at a historic moment.
I did too. I thought I was struck by the fact that he put foreign policy actually in the latter part of the speech, and he kind of he didn't discount it at all, but it was definitely more of an afterthought in this speech, and I think that was done intentionally. Obviously, I mean, you know, a lot of people are saying, "Well, wait a minute, we were expecting some sort of some sort of maybe more boldness on Iran during the speech or a little bit. No, he was actually it was very muted, if you will. And that's intentional. I mean, my understanding.
Yeah, what is your take? Right, because George W. Bush might have given a speech in which Iran was front and center.
Right, axis of evil and the whole thing.
Right. So we probably went an hour and a half before we got to foreign policy. I didn't think that was wrong.
I didn't either.
In fact, I thought we've got a red hot economy, and a lot of his policies are working. But I was curious your take of why did he lead with everything else and get to foreign policy on the verge of a war that late in the speech?
I think there are a couple of things. First of all, just as it relates to Iran, when he was being muted about Iran, that signified to me something important because I've known Trump for about 15 years or so. When he gets kind of quiet, and when I can't put quiet and Trump in the same sentence, but when he gets somewhat muted or quiet, get ready.
Meaning he wasn't being bombastic. He's not making threats.
That's right. And he was more subdued. Okay. And when he is subdued, that means get ready, buckle your seatbelt. Okay. Something's coming.
Interesting.
That's my take on it.
That's an interesting take, for you knowing him that long.
That's typically what will happen. So my guess is, it's just a matter of time, as we all think it will be regarding Iran. But to a larger point on the State of the Union, look, he spent about, I would say, 85%, 90% of his speech on domestic issues. He needs to do that, right? Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the Monroe Doctrine, about Venezuela, about Iran, about Israel, about Greenland, Cuba. I mean, we can go on and on. I feel like lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. Yeah. And so because of that, I think there's been this view within the MAGA movement, within America First, within his base, within the midterm voter electorate, which is what everybody's wondering about. Right. That he's giving too much ink, if you will, or at least too much
time and attention to foreign policy.
Foreign policy. And here's the thing. The truth of the matter is you can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? I mean, he's done so much. Just look at the border, and we just go down the list of domestically what he's done. Right. But there's been a perception, and Donald Trump is always about PR. Donald Trump knows that perception is reality, and he's his best PR agency. It's the DJT Inc. I mean, that's what he is, right? And so because of that, he did 80 to 90% on domestic issues, and that was intentional as well. He started with the economy, but he didn't just let up there. He made foreign policy an afterthought, and I thought that was because he knows he needs to regain the momentum from a PR standpoint. The White House will say, they have a great record to run on. But if voters aren't feeling it, you got to be able to make the sell, and Trump knows that better than anybody.
Well, he had the biggest audience he's going to get for a while. True. And he does have a good story to tell. I mean, the economy is roaring. We're at 5.4% GDP growth of an economy this size. The last quarter, that's a huge amount of growth. Inflation has dropped from over 9% under Biden to 2% thereabouts.
Real wages are real wages.
Real wages are going up.
Right.
Gas prices are coming down. Oil prices are coming down. Core inflation is going down. So it is a good story, but I think it is early. I think most Americans don't feel it yet, but they probably, with Venezuela, Iran, everything else, and the Democrats attacking, they're probably not hearing his case. This was his strongest moment. To make it.
Here's the thing. You mentioned a lot of positive economic indicators. There's a couple that are concerning, to a degree, a little bit. Grocery prices, the old, just what kind of things you buy at the grocery store, up about 3% or so. Not much, but up. Home prices up a little bit. And there's some unemployment up a little bit. So it's a mixed bag, I think is the best way to term it. Having said that, there is progress. I believe that the State of the Union, as much as it was in late February, I think the state of the real union, in other words, what will the country look like as it relates to the midterm elections, I think you'll see that in Q3, quarter three, economically in July, when we have a better sense of whether the big, beautiful bill and the tax cuts and all of that come to fruition, and people start to say, you know what? Hey, I got an IRS check the other day. It was pretty good. I haven't had that in a while. So I think we'll have a better State of the Union, idea in July.
6 months from now.
Yeah, exactly.
5-6 months from now.
I agree.
Heading into the fall.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Now, if, All Israel News is not a partisan organization, but we're trying to analyze what I think is fair to say President Trump has been the strongest proponent of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Every American president has just talked about it, and many of them have done very good and important things, including Democrats. But I don't think there's any question that President Trump has been more pro-Israel and pro-U.S. Israel doing actions and explaining why Israel is in America's interest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, he is not being dragged along by Prime Minister Netanyahu, but he's working with Netanyahu.
Tucker Carlson of that, by the way.
Well,
but anyhow, sorry, go ahead.
No, but that's the attack line. Tucker, Candace, Nick Fuentes, Megyn Kelly, and others are making the case that Trump is being dragged by the nose by a little country of 10 million people. Why would we do that? Trump is making a very robust case. This is one of my greatest allies, but I got other allies too. And Israel barely came up in the speech last night. Okay, but we're all Israel news, so we're focusing on how does the U.S. economy and U.S. foreign policy, U.S. national security policy, how does it affect Israel and Iran? So in the foreign policy section, what was your takeaway? What were some of the key headlines for you?
Well, a couple of things. I noticed that he didn't use Monroe Doctrine, which was interesting. I mean, once again, I thought the whole thing, not just Iran, but I thought on foreign policy overall, it was understated. Israel, for example. I mean, I tell you what, I always wonder about Trump on I call it the prompter retention rate. Where is he exactly? In other words, how much is he sticking a prompter? And because I have the script in front of me of where he's at, I'm looking at the script, I'm looking up and going, okay, that's not in the script. So he was probably at about 80% on prompter, thumbs up, 20% nervous Susie Wiles and others in the background. And one of the things...
Susie Wiles being the chief of staff. And trying to not rein Trump in, but trying to keep him focused.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, he went there yesterday, on Wednesday or Tuesday night. I get all my days confused with Hamas. Where he said, "Hey, they dug up some bodies. They worked with the Israel." Really, stop, stop. You're off prompter. Please go back on prompter.
Right.
It's that type of stuff that can be very frustrating. Look, he's
and just to be clear, it's not like he's having stuff written for him and he doesn't agree with it. This is a speech that he's worked on with his team for months to make it just what he wants to say. So when he goes off prompter, it's not like he's abandoning what his team wants him to say. This is what he's already decided to say. So then the question is, where are these rabbit trails potentially going? And to be friendly to Hamas was a little off.
Yeah. Now, we give him the benefit of the doubt, don't we, right? I mean, with everything that he's done for Israel, you give him the benefit of the doubt. But the Qatari stuff, obviously, is a concern as it relates to some of the things he's done, whether it be accepting the plane or that whole situation with Netanyahu, when he had Netanyahu get on the phone and the picture that was released by the White House, which was basically kind of the call of shame, if you will. I mean, that type of stuff. But here's why he's doing this. And once again, I'm not trying to make excuses for him, and I'm not even trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But he's doing that because for Trump, it's all about don't screw up the deal. That's all that matters to him, right? He's not a Republican, right? He's a Trump-publican, right? He's an art of the deal guy. So when in his view, at least, in Trump's view, when Israel hit Qatar, that was upsetting the apple cart. That was upsetting the deal. We need Qatar for X, Y, and Z and the whole thing. So, what are you doing? So this idea that there's some sort of moral prism, and I hate to kind of criticize him on the moral prism aspect, though many people will. He doesn't look at it necessarily through a moral prism as much as he looks at it from a business dealing and an art of the deal. It's very transactional. And by the way, that has a negative connotation because we've heard before that, the relationship with evangelicals was always transactional. I don't believe that was the case at all. I wrote a book called The Faith of Donald Trump. And in that book, I was in the Oval Office and I spoke to Trump. And I said, so why do you like evangelicals so much? I'm curious about that. He goes, because they have a passion. They have a passion for their God. He didn't say their God. He said a passion for God, for Jesus. And, he likes people that are, how do I say it, kind of Friday Night Lights, run through the banner. He likes people that have passion, and evangelicals have passion, convictions for God, and he loves that. And that's what was the attraction for Trump as it relates to evangelicals.
He's also experienced grace, even things that he said or has done in the past, or evangelicals have given him a lot more grace. Some people can call it, abandoning, so critics, especially evangelical never Trumpers, will say, you're just willing to let him say and do anything. Evangelicals who love the president, don't agree with him on everything, but feel like he's the best case of moving our agenda forward, would say, this is called grace. We're not criticizing him for every single thing he's doing. We respect the office, and he he's the one getting rid of Roe v. Wade. He's the one, protecting marriage. He's the one against children being forced against their parents' will to be changed from a boy to a girl or a girl to a boy. That's cultural warriorism that we would not have expected from a once Manhattan liberal,
right,
like a billionaire like Donald Trump. We would never imagine that he would be the cultural champion or a champion of evangelical principles, but he has been.
No, he has been, because we've read the Bible. And we know the stories are replete with examples of fallen men who God will take. God uses imperfect people, right, to accomplish his perfect will. And I think we understand that. And that's where that grace comes in now.
Okay, I'm so grateful to David Brody for spending time and helping me analyze what we just saw and heard of the State of the Union. But we are only just beginning, and we're going to come back after the commercial break with Hanan Leshinsky. As I mentioned earlier, he is the brother of Yaron Leshinsky, who was assassinated as somebody working at the Israeli embassy, assassinated last May with his girlfriend, also worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington, Sarah Milgram. They were gunned down in the streets of Washington. It's just a brutal, horrific, sickening murder. The families are still grieving, and I need you to pray for them. But we'll hear from Hanan how he got invited by the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, a wonderful evangelical Christian and someone who believes strongly in the U.S.-Israel alliance, despite all the attacks from Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and everybody else. But you're going to hear all about that and my conversation with Hanan, what it was like, how did he get invited, what did he see, whom did we pray with, a cabinet official in the Trump administration, and what was his observations as an Israeli at this historic moment. Don't go away. We'll be right back on this edition of Inside the Epicenter. Welcome back to this special report, this special episode of Inside the Epicenter from Washington, D.C. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Lynn right now is on a plane from Israel here to Washington. We've got Joshua Fund board meetings and other important meetings throughout this coming week. But we wanted to get this special report, and I want to take you now to my conversation at the U.S. Capitol with All Israel News correspondent Hanan Leshinsky, whose brother, Yaron, was tragically assassinated with his girlfriend, Sarah Milgram. They were both employees at the Israeli embassy in Washington. They were both murdered as part of this explosion of Jew hatred, of anti-Israel sentiment here in the United States. Anti-Semitic attacks are up 360% over the past year or so. And Yaron and Sarah were tragically caught up in that. So I want you to hear the conversation now. And I ask you to be praying for Yaron's family, Hanan's family, Sarah's family, as you listen to this interview. My conversation with Hanan Leshinsky. What is President Trump about to do in Iran? He laid out his speech. He laid out his case to the American people. What was it like to be in the room, to be in the House chamber for one of the most dramatic and historic State of the Union addresses by any president, certainly by this president, President Trump, on the eve of war? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg for All Israel News. We're here at the U.S. Capitol. And last night, one of my colleagues with All Israel News and I had the opportunity to be invited by the Speaker of the House, an evangelical Christian, Mike Johnson, who is super pro-Israel, and he couldn't be more pro-American. He is the Speaker of the House. He invited us to come and meet with him and attend a reception in his office, in his suite, and then attend and watch this State of the Union address by Donald Trump. And it was a remarkable evening. With me was my colleague, Hanan Leshinsky. You may remember that name because Hanan Leshinsky's younger brother, Yaron, was brutally and tragically assassinated along with his girlfriend, Sarah Milgram, here in Washington just a little less than a year ago by a crazed pro-Palestinian gunman who traveled here from the Midwest to find somebody to kill. Both Yaron and Sarah Milgram worked for the Israeli embassy. They were going to a Jewish event with Jewish young people. And this was a global story. It was a horrific event. And so I want you to meet with and hear from Hanan Leshinsky, the older brother, the oldest in the family, who had the opportunity to be invited by the Speaker of the House. I want you to hear how that came about, but to come and honor his brother, to be here to witness what's going on in Washington and the president's remarkable, I would say phenomenal remarks. They're really dramatic on the eve of this war with Iran. So let's take a moment, and I want you to watch my conversation here at the Capitol the day after the State of the Union address with Hanan Leshinsky, my colleague with All Israel News. Hanan, it's great to spend time with you here at the Capitol. What an honor it was to be with you at the State of the Union address. You invited by Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and it was great to accompany you. Can you just share a little bit about, first, how did the invitation come to your family, and how did you wind up being your family's representative?
Yes. So the office of Speaker Johnson actually reached out to my parents first. They invited my parents to come to the State of the Union, but with
That's
all
amazing, actually.
It's been great. They're so gracious. You know, Speaker Johnson has also, when the murder of my brother happened, shortly after, he led a bipartisan vigil here on the steps, actually.
Amazing.
And so he invited my parents, but with the Iran war looming, as we're filming this, you know, we don't know.
Yeah.
It could happen any minute, though. We're expecting it in a couple of more days.
Yeah.
But with this looming, they didn't want to travel to the U.S. and get stuck. But luckily, I was already in Nashville, Tennessee, actually, to cover NRB and also
Right, for All Israel News. We're so grateful.
Exactly, the Judeo-Christian Zionist Congress.
Right.
And so they just asked me if I could go represent the family and accept the invitation on their behalf, and that's what we did.
Share with people who may not know your brother's story, what happened last year?
Yeah, so this happened at the end of May last year. My brother was working here in D.C. at the Israeli embassy. He was an embassy worker. He wasn't a diplomat yet, though he might have
emerging
wanted to.
Working for the diplomatic corps, like we're working for the foreign ministry.
Yeah, exactly. And his girlfriend, Sarah Milgram, who also worked at the embassy, on that night they were visiting at an event for young diplomats and staffers.
Young Jewish
here
people.
In DC.
It was a Jewish event, right?
It was a Jewish event by the AJC.
The American Jewish Congress.
Yes,
right?
the American Jewish Congress at the Capitol Jewish Museum, actually. And so when they went out that night, they were assassinated from behind by a crazed pro-Palestinian activist who shouted.
Traveled here all the way from Chicago with arms, somehow got a handgun.
Yeah.
And what did he shout?
Yeah, he shouted, "Free Palestine!" You know, I did this for Gaza.
Yeah.
And so they were killed there in front of the Jewish Museum.
How old was your brother, Yaron? He's your younger brother.
Yeah, he was 30 years old.
And Sarah was there just about?
She was a couple of years younger. Yeah, I think
okay.
she was
And they met at the embassy,
26.
right?
Yes, they met through their work after October 7. You know, this horrific tragedy brought them together, and in their shared commitment for Israel.
The tragedy of October 7th.
Yes,
they started working together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Through their shared commitment, their passion to work for Israel, for the hostages, that was very important to both of them.
Yeah.
And this is how they met.
Wow. Now, they were dating, and as I understand it, they were planning to come to Israel, to Jerusalem, to meet your family, have her meet the family for the first time in person, and get engaged. That's the story?
Yes, that's how we understood it. Actually, we didn't know that Yaron was apparently planning to get engaged in Jerusalem.
You learned that later?
Yes, through friends, and he didn't explicitly tell us that he wanted to get engaged.
That was going to be a surprise.
There were plans in place already, apparently.
Okay, wow.
And so they were supposed to fly out a couple of days after the murder to meet us for the first time. We didn't get to know Sarah. We talked to her on the phone a couple of times, unfortunately, but
Wow.
we were so looking forward to meeting her, to get to know her.
Yeah. Now, you are a strong evangelical follower of Jesus. Your own was, your family are. Obviously, your own dating Sarah, she was a follower of the Lord. And how are you guys handling all this? I mean, this was a global story, and it hit you guys hard. How are you guys doing? How can we be praying for you guys and for Sarah's family?
Well, I mean, we speaking in the family, we often said, it's only prayer that helps in any way. It's just trying to deal, with time, trying to even to wrap our minds around what really happened there. And so we've been greatly encouraged and by so many Christians and non-Christians, reaching out to us, saying that they're praying for us. We've been hearing from the U.S. to Africa to around the world, people have reached out to us. And that's encouraging. I mean, that's the only thing. What can you do? He will not, they will not return, but
you'll get to see them again in heaven. So to be here at the Capitol with the President of the United States here, the Vice President, obviously as a personal guest of the Speaker of the House, you got time with him, you got photos with him. What was that like? I mean, your life is, you are a reporter for All Israel News. You are a guy who covers the news, and you have been drawn into a story that you never anticipated. And what was it like for you to be here last night at a huge historic moment and on the possible eve of war with Iran also?
I mean, first of all, it's a surreal experience to find my name in the news, right? Instead of writing the news.
Right.
On a professional level, it was incredibly, an incredible experience to be able to just see all of these politicians that we are covering in our day-to-day, everything that they do, if it's President Trump or the Vice President, Speaker Johnson, War Secretary Hegseth, every one of their decisions.
Secretary Rubio, the Secretary of State was there.
Yes.
Everybody that is in our orbit of affecting Israel and the Arab world and Iran and
just to mention
events.
Witkoff and Kushner as well.
Right, exactly.
And every one of their decisions has such a great impact on Israel. So that was incredible to see, to meet with Speaker Johnson.
Yeah.
And as you said, this might turn out to be a historic event with President Trump saying that he will not accept anything less than an Iranian commitment not to enrich uranium and not to end their nuclear program. And we'll see in the coming days how that turns out.
Yeah. What else struck you as an observer in the gallery watching all this as an All Israel News reporter? What were some of the other sort of takeaways for you?
One thing I will say is that we've also at All Israel News, we've been covering this emerging split within the Republican Party about support for Israel.
Right.
I don't think we saw any of that during the speech. President Trump didn't mention Israel a lot, but he mentioned the hostages, he mentioned the Gaza ceasefire, and we saw all of the Republicans stand up, applaud for that, so that was encouraging.
We didn't see much of the Democrats doing that.
And that's the other side of this coin. We were actually just sitting above Rashida Tlaib, the American Palestinian representative, with her Palestinian flag and scarf.
And Ilan Omar, who had a headscarf on, a Muslim.
Both of them shouting and protesting.
Calling Trump a murderer.
So that's not surprising, but it was interesting seeing that up close as well.
But you're right. We saw that split, Democrat, Republican, but we didn't see a Tucker wing of the Republican Party. We did not see a Candace Owens wing of the Republican Party. We did not see a Nick Fuentes wing. There was nobody sitting on their hands going, I will not support this president on his approach towards the Middle East, towards Israel, towards Gaza. So that is noteworthy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's encouraging. Again, sometimes when you're reporting the news, I think you can get too into the story itself, and we're dealing a lot with Tucker, and that is a very important story. He's very influential. But just from talking to a lot of people, just what we saw during the speech yesterday, the support for Israel is still there. It might be changing a little bit, but the Americans, from what I see, are still loving Israel and supporting Israel.
Yeah, certainly the Republican Party on this side. We are not a partisan news organization. We're just looking at what are the facts, and we saw tremendous unity on the president's policies. This is interesting because it's not just about Israel. President Trump laid out the case of why he might have to go to war with Iran. He said he didn't want to. He's trying to pursue a diplomatic solution, but he made it pretty clear why he would do it, because Iran has this uranium enrichment program. They have had a nuclear weapons program, and they're trying to reconstitute it. That's news, actually, because we've been hearing sort of leaks and a sense of that. But for him to say it on the record, that they are trying to reconstitute this nuclear weapons program, that was a big deal. He mentioned the ballistic missile program. He's not saying it's only nuclear. And he talked about Iran's support of terrorism, and also that and he used a number that I've never heard him say, 32,000 Iranians murdered by this regime. And so he really laid out for the American people the case. If I have to go to war with Iran, this is why I'm doing it. I don't want to do it, but I might have to.
Yeah. And I think it's a critical point also for Israel, for this to be clear that it's not just about Israel.
Right.
I mean, Israel is in this story. Israel will be the first target of the Iranians if they do shoot their missiles. But this is about world security. It's about American security as well. And I think it was
American
great.
Security, American national interests, and American allies.
Absolutely.
And you're right. We had reported on All Israel News in the sort of the preview of the State of the Union address that we didn't think Israel would be mentioned much. We didn't think Israel would be the focus, because President Trump, he loves Israel, and he's met with Prime Minister Netanyahu 7 times over the past year. But President Trump does not see himself being driven by Israeli interests in this. He laid out a very America first, not America only, but definitely an America first approach to the Iran threat. And I thought that was really interesting. It's what we thought would happen, but he's unpredictable. So you never quite know what he's going to say and how he's going to say it.
No.
Was there anything else that struck you from the president's speech, and also just being in that environment, a historic moment, you being there for the first time in your life?
I think just speaking as an Israeli, it's amazing just the size, the scope of this whole event. Just being in this space where, as I mentioned, I mean, decisions are taken that are critical for the world over, not just for Israel, for the whole world. Yeah. And also something that I just love to see. I mean, the love that the American people have for their country, for their sports teams, even for the hockey gold medalists who came in there, the way they honor their veterans, their war heroes, even World War II heroes. Yeah. And I mean, World War II heroes in America are guys that we want to honor as well, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it was amazing seeing that.
Last question, and I really appreciate your time. It's been such an honor to be here with you, and I still always believe biblically, and just, I just believe that Israel and Jerusalem are the epicenter of the world. But right now, most people would say this is the epicenter. Between this Capitol and about a mile and a half down the road at the White House, this is the epicenter of the geopolitical universe. And I think that's fair to see that. And the world lead, or the American leaders, the decision makers in that room last night, the Supreme Court justices and so forth, absolutely fascinating. One last thing, though, getting invited to the speaker's reception, members of Congress, evangelical leaders, members of the cabinet, we got to spend some time with one of the cabinet members, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner, who's an evangelical pastor who from Texas, Dallas, who got invited by the president. Like, I want you to run one of my major cabinet departments. He's a strong believer. He's a prayer warrior. Just getting time with him. He was touched by your story, spending time in prayer, just bowing our heads and praying together. Another major evangelical leader, I'm not sure if I should mention right now, just because we didn't say that we could, really talking with us sort of inside baseball on how he sees this dust up with Tucker, but also the threat from Iran. Just curious, how, those interactions were a lot of value added in a way that, again, most people never get a chance to be in a room and just sitting with a cabinet member or a major evangelical leader, among others.
Right. No, I think it's a very valuable experience for me as well, again, as someone who's not American, to have these in-depth, behind-the-scenes conversations. get a feel for the pulse, of the Republican Party, of the evangelical movement. And just on a personal level, it has amazed me. I've said this several times. To have a cabinet member, come in, spend time, say they're praying for my family.
Yeah, he knew your story, your family story.
Absolutely. That was very touching, and just coming together, bowing our heads in prayer in a public space. I mean, in the most in the highest spaces in the country.
Yeah,
just an amazing experience.
Well, you are leaving tonight, but I'm really grateful that the Lord chose you to represent your family, represent your brother and Sarah, and to have a doorway into this world. And I think this is part of what we're trying to do at All Israel News is we're training up a new generation of reporters who know the Lord, who believe in truth, and are covering the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to global affairs and social media and what's going on in the Middle East. But what happens here in Washington affects us, and I think God, gave you an opportunity. Plus, just being with you at NRB last week and the Judeo-Christian Zionist Conference, I'm so grateful, Hanan, for what God's doing in your life. We're all deeply grieved still about what you guys have gone through, but we're grateful that the Lord has, Yaron and Sarah in heaven with Him. They're safe, they're good, and He's continuing to give you guys a life and a mission. And we're honored to do life and ministry together and media with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you.
So grateful for Hanan Leshinsky. I'm grateful for his family. I'm grateful for Sarah's family. I'm grateful that Hanan is not only a friend, but a colleague at All Israel News, the news media ministry that the Joshua Fund has been strongly supporting over the last 5 years. I hope this special episode has been helpful to you. This war could break out at any moment. By the time you listen to it, maybe it already has. I wanted, though, to get you some material, some context for kind of where we are at this moment if the war hasn't broken out yet, based on what we got to see and hear at the State of the Union address. Please keep praying for the Joshua Fund. This is a critical moment, and we need wisdom, and we need your prayers. And if you can financially support us, we'd be grateful as well. The needs are real and they are growing. And you can learn more about how to become a monthly donor to the Joshua Fund, $50, $75, $100 or more, whatever the Lord puts on your heart. You can go to joshuafund.com. Again, joshuafund.com. There's a big donate button right in the top. When you click it, it doesn't mean you have donated. It means it'll walk you through how to do so. And you can give securely online in a number of ways. And for American and Canadian citizens, it is all tax deductible. Thank you so much for listening. Please also go to joshuafund.com to learn more about the Epicenter Summit, April 7th, 2027, and the Joshua Fund's first prayer and vision tour of Israel that we've done since before the war and before COVID. And we really would love for you to come and be with us and let us show you the land of Israel, the land of the Bible. Come walk where Jesus walked, where the apostles walked, where the prophets walked. Come worship the Lord in the city of the great King. Come pray for the peace of Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, come to the Epicenter Summit and hear President Isaac Herzog, hear Ambassador Mike Huckabee. I'll be sharing, as well as wonderful pastors and Bible teachers like Ann Graham Lotz and Greg Laurie, Jack Graham, Skip Heitzig, and we'll have others to announce as well. You can find out all about it, and you can sign up to come on the Joshua Fund tour by going to joshuafund.com. Thank you. Thank you so much for standing with us, praying with us. I hope this episode was helpful. We are heading into dark and uncharted waters, and the spiritual warfare is intense. So we appreciate your prayers and your encouragement. And have a great week, and Lord willing, we'll be with you soon on the next episode of Inside the Epicenter.
I'm Joel Rosenberg. On your left, you'll find some videos we've chosen specifically for you. We look forward to partnering with you to bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus.